Hello there, all my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and today I'm going to show you how to make these cute little wirework baskets. Now, of course, they're perfect for Easter and collecting little chocolate eggs, but you can also use them for loads of other things, or even just for decoration. And you're easily able to make them the size and shape that you want, and you can also play around with the gauges of wire depending on the look that you prefer. But if you want to learn how to make your own little basket, then keep watching. So to make our baskets, I'm going to be using 2 different gauges of regular round copper wire. And first of all, here I have a 1mm gauge. This is going to be the base wire. And both of these reels here are a 0.5mm, and we're going to be using this gauge here to weave with. So then to cut some lengths of our wire, what I have is 4 lengths of my 1mm of about 20 centimeters each, and make sure they don't have any kinks or bends in them. Now, as for the 0.5mm wire, I'm not going to be cutting off lengths. I'm literally leaving them attached to the reels here, and I'm going to be working with them like that because it's hard to know how long we're going to need, and also they would be quite long lengths to work with. So I'm just leaving them on the reels. So then we need to shape all our base wires, so I'm going to just grab one at a time. And then also my tweezer nose pliers here, and we want to place the pliers basically about the middle of the length of wire here. Doesn't have to be precise, but just about the middle. You can always measure if you want to. Then I need to put a bend into it and create a bit of an angle here. So something a little bit like that. Now what we then want to do is obviously do this with all of them, but we kind of want to end up with them fitting nicely together. And one way to kind of know roughly what size you need to make the angle would be to take your lengths here, obviously the ones that we haven't bent yet, and just gonna lay them down one at a time, because we basically need to start creating the middle of the basket. So first of all, I'm gonna cross 2 over each other, directly like this, so straight across from each other, and then the other 2 would be coming in between there. So I have one left, obviously the other one I've already bent, but that will come in between there, and the last one will come in between there. But you can then easily use, now we don't need that last one, you can use these sections here to kind of see roughly how large we need to make that angle. So the one I've already done, we can hold it up against there and see that's actually not too bad. So you basically just want to then use this one that I've already bent, and can take the other ones here because I know that that's pretty correct. I can then take my next length again, place my pliers in about the middle, and then make the bend, and then I can literally use the one that I made, and I know it's pretty correct, to measure the other ones against. So obviously that one needs to be a bit tighter. And again, like I said, they do not have to be 100% perfect. It's just as close to each other as possible. So something a little bit like that. And then do that with the remaining 2 as well. So now I shaped all of them here. And then what we're going to do is basically start to put them together. So you want to get the points towards each other here in the middle, and then we basically want to place them. So again, just like when I did with the straight wire, we have 2 directly opposite each other, and then 2 directly opposite each other right in between those 2 there. So they'll basically be placed like this. And then we have the lengths of the wire, or the legs, whatever you want to call them, coming out from the middle there, evenly spaced out. But of course we then need to start attaching these together, because right now obviously they aren't attached at all. But then this is where the 0.5mm comes in. So like I said, still attached to the reel. So I'm just going to start out grabbing one of them here, and also just one length of the 0.5mm wire for now, just to get started. So I first of all just want to attach my length of 0.5mm wire here. Just leave a little tail, and I'm just going to go around the base wire here on the one side. Then it's attached. I'm going to push it all the way down to the point, but staying on that one side. Then I'm going to bring it up through the middle there, continue the wrap, you could say, but then go over the top because I'm coming up from below, and then I go over the top of the other side and make sure I push this as far to the point as possible while still staying on the sides, and then wrap around that side. So I've basically attached the 0.5mm wire now and wrapped around the first one. So I then grab my next base wire and place it after the first one here. Again, the point in towards the other point there, and make sure that there's about an equal angle between the two here as there is between the legs for each of them. It's not 100% crucial just now because it can be still adjusted, plus it might move around a bit anyway. But then I lay this so the point is equal to the other one, and then my wire here is going underneath and then wrap around this leg. Make sure that with the wraps there that I have the two separate wires sitting as close to each other as possible, so we don't have a length of the 0.5mm there between them. So that's wrapped around. So I'm coming up between, continue to the other side of the point, wrap around there, and if you ever need to, you can always use your pliers to help push wires into the position that we want them to sit specifically, and also push them close together. So for instance, pushing them further down towards the point, but there, as you can see, there's still movement between the two, so don't worry too much about it, just have it roughly in place. But that's the second one. Just kind of keep that tail out of the way. You can use that to hold on to as well along the way. So grab the next length of base wire, within placing that as the next one. Try and keep hold of the points there, and then bring the wire, weaving wire up, and then wrap around that first side here and push it all the way down to the point, and make sure that the two wires are sitting close together. So I need to just bring that in a little bit. Just wrap that a little bit more, and then come up between to go to the other side of the point and do the wrap on there. And now you can kind of slowly start to get the idea of it. Just push that tight, because these two now, the one I just attached and the very first one, they are going to be sitting directly opposite each other. So obviously the last one that I'm going to add, which is this one here, is going to sit directly opposite the middle one of the three that I've added already. And that's how we originally laid it out. So again, add this in the same way. Wrap around the one side. Then come up. And then go to the other side. Now as you can see, this part can be a bit fiddly because we're literally putting them all together now. Obviously everything is still loose. So go to the other side and just do an extra wrap. Again, just pushing that tight. And then I basically just want to close this up. So I'm going to make sure to come up. So go under the next one and come up here. And then if you can tell, it's still loose. It's going to get more fastened as we go, and it's going to stay in place where we want it to. But this is basically now the beginning part, the very center of the basket. So before we continue with that, we actually now need to bring in the other length of 0.5 mil. So we first of all kind of just need to place it in somewhere. So I'm going to place it between these legs here. Now you just want to have a look at yours, and basically the aim that you want to do with this is to make sure it goes opposite the other one. So this one here, this length of base wire that I'm going to go over under with it, the other length of 0.5 mil I went under, so this one needs to go over that. So it goes over first, and then it goes under the next one, which is where the other one that we already used, it comes over that and straight out and away from it here. So that is going to be the principal. Now what we're then going to have is two tails here coming down from the middle, kind of on the back side that I'm holding on to. Like I said, we can use them to hold on to the piece as well throughout. So otherwise, literally just grab it wherever you can. So basically now we're getting to the point of just having to weave these 0.5 mil wires around these lengths of base wires over and over again to obviously create the basket. So like I said, the point is that they're opposite each other all the time. So the next one I'm going to do here is the one that I was just using, because I'm going to then bring that over the next one. And then especially in the beginning here, just try and hold the base wires in place in the right position. Like I said, once we've done a couple of rounds, it will become more fastened and you won't have to worry so much about it. But I'm then bringing this over and then just straight out. And then I go back to the other wire, and then that comes up. So first of all, it's going under the one that I just brought the other wire over. And I'm pushing it down as close to the point there as possible, and it then goes over the next one, and then the previous one here comes under that one, and then over the next one, and that is basically the rhythm that I'm going to keep doing now. So just kind of get these tails out of the way, grabbing, you could say, the previous one that's coming underneath there, and then it goes over the next one. And you'll start to see that we're going to be creating kind of a woven section with these two 0.5 mil wires, and it's going to, as we keep going around and around, it's going to keep growing outwards. Now what I will also mention is, because we're using these two lengths, and technically as we're bringing them over and under, they're also getting twisted with each other, which means that they do also get twisted further down here. So you can either, if you say have reels like this and you're working on a table, then just kind of do a few movements in the basket here and then just untwist them, because we obviously don't want to get the twist to be too far along, because that will get a real mess to untangle. So basically untangle the wires when you need to, and you can always kind of almost pre-tangle them a little bit in the same direction just for a bit, to basically almost create a bit of a twist, but it's the opposite direction, so that gives you a little bit more leeway to kind of do this weaving for a bit longer before you have to then untwist again. So you could do that, or if you don't want to kind of move your reels around like this, you can also, as you feel, you can see you're getting the twist down the wires, you can also just grab your piece and basically twist the piece itself here in the opposite direction, which will then untwist the wires further down. So it's completely up to you how you prefer to do that. So I've kept going, as you can see, and it's grown substantially. So this is basically going to be the bottom of the basket, and this is also the point where you want to decide on the size really. So now I know this is the size I want, so what I'm going to do now is start to bend these lengths of wire. So I'm just going to kind of put my finger on where this weaving ends, and I'm just going to kind of bend them upwards. Again, it's up to you how you want ultimately the whole basket to look. So if you want it quite upright on the sides, if you want it more open, it's completely up to you, and you determine that by how you put these lengths of wire. So I'm just bending them upwards, but keeping a slight angle there. Like I said, you can decide that for yourself. So doing that all the way around, get it as even as possible. Just doing the last two, and the last one there. So you can now see that they're all sticking kind of upwards instead of being flat out. And like I said, this is then what determines the size as well, because we're now going to start basically just continue wrapping in the exact same way, but it's now going to start going up and being the sides of the basket. So you just want to continue in the exact same technique. Go back to where you left off there. And again, I'll go to the furthest back one and go underneath the one that the other one is going over. And then over the next one, back to the previous one, bring that under, and then over the next one. And just continue like that. And you're going to then gradually find that it's going to move up the wires here and create a side. And again, you can adjust these more as you go, depending how you want yours to look. So I've now reached the height that I want my basket to be here. Then we're done using these 0.5mm wires, so with the weaving. So I'm just going to finish them off. So I'm just going to take one at a time. So take the one that I brought over last. And then all I'm going to do is actually wrap it around that base wire. Just about 2 times. And I just want to make sure that the wraps are nice and tight. And then once we've done that, I can go in, cut off the excess, get rid of the length, and then just squeeze that end of wire in place. And then you can just make sure to push that down, and it'll kind of, you'll be able to kind of push it down so it gets hidden inside of the wires that were brought over previously. So just push that down into that, and then just do the same. So bring the other one around underneath that, and just kind of bring it to the next length as we're just doing the pattern of the weaving. But instead of continuing, we also just want to finish off this one. Same principle. Just literally wrap it around the base wire instead of continuing to weave. And just again do that twice. Exactly the same as before. Then go in, cut off the excess, get rid of the wires on the rails now, and then just squeeze down the end of the wire. And again, you can push this down into the weave and kind of hide it away like that. So this is kind of the basis of the basket itself finished. As you can see as well, you can kind of move this weaving wire up and down, but just kind of keep pushing it down to where we obviously wanted it to finish. And then moving on to finishing off these base wires here, what I'm going to do is you basically just want to pick one to start with, doesn't matter where. We then need to just going to take my tweezers nose pliers here and just do this with the first one. So again, I'm kind of just pushing my weave down so that is and stays where I want it to be. Then I'm going to grab onto that length of base wire just ever so slightly above the weave. Then put a bend into it. I'm going to bend it in this case towards the right. And I'm making sure it's coming on the outside of the next wire. And then just keep bending it basically all the way until it then lays flat like that. And now what I'm going to then do is we need to then secure this. So I'm going to do that around the next base wire. So again, moving on to that, push everything down. And then make sure it stays in place, and then use the end of this wire here to wrap around. So I'm going from the outside here towards the inside of the basket. And just bring it all the way around nice and tight. Something a little bit like that. Then I'm going to get my heavy duty flush cutters, because this is a thick gauge wire that I'm cutting. Cut off the excess, but I'm making sure to cut so I just do that here, that once I've cut it, the wire that's left will fit, you can see that there, with, when I obviously tighten it a bit more, the very end of the wire will end up curling around obviously, but then butting up against the side of itself like that. So let me just tighten that. Just bring the end down a bit and then tighten this little loop we created around that base wire. Basically just tighten it so it stays in place and obviously becomes nice and secure, and can also go in from another angle and just bring it as tight as we can around the wire. Then make sure it's pushed all the way down as far as it'll go. And from now on, I'm not going to be using my tweezernose pliers, because I'm going to move on to the wire that we just wrapped the other one around. I'm now going to grab, bend that towards the right, again in front of the next one, and bend it basically just against the other wire that we just brought around it. Just bring it as nice and tight down as possible, and then bring it towards that next base wire. Do the same thing. We need to then wrap this around all the way around just the once, so we can go in with our cutters to cut off the excess here like that. And again, just bring it down first of all so it's flat, and then otherwise tighten it. So exactly the same basic that we just did before. The only difference from one to the other here is the first one, obviously I used my tweezernose pliers to make the bend with, and that is because we obviously start in one place and we need to just have enough space when we get to the very last one that we can end up making it look the same all the way around. But just continue like this. Now reaching the last wire here, all I'm going to do is again bend that down. Don't have to worry about it coming in front, because there ain't no other lengths of the base wire to worry about. But what we then do have to do is just kind of bend it gently and get the very end in underneath the first one, because obviously that's the one we bent originally to begin with. So we just want to get it in under there, but above all the wires for the weaving, and just pull it through. And otherwise it's the same principle. Bring it around all the way. So we end up, when we cut it off, with the same finish and look as the rest, which is obviously then kind of making it all seamless all the way around. Obviously we did need to have a starting point, so just close this up as well. And then while we're at it, might as well just go to the bottom here and get rid of these two tails as well. This is the 0.5 that we were using right at the beginning. So you just want to make sure before you cut anything off that you just have each of the wires there wrapped around a base wire. And then you can just go in and cut it off, the excess there. And then just make sure, because you can feel it if you just run your finger over it, but just make sure to squeeze it down with tweezer nose pliers, so we get that end basically tucked back into the weave and get it out of the way. And of course do the same with the other one. So now we've got the little base of our basket done, then all that's left to do is add a little handle if you want to as well. And for that I've cut another 2 lengths on my 1mm, and these are about 15 to 20 centimeters. So it really depends on the size of handle you need, obviously depending on the size of basket that you've made. So I'm then grabbing my tweezer nose pliers and a pair of flat nose pliers, so just 2 flat nose pliers of some sort. Then my 2 lengths of wire. Grab onto the wires towards one end. And then on the other end I'm grabbing kind of in the opposite direction here. And I just want to start adding a twist. So I'm twisting the wires together by bringing the pliers in opposite directions. So to begin with, it can be a little bit hard to get the twist going, but once it just kind of catches on, you can just keep going here, and then basically it's up to you how tight you want the twist as well. So I've ended up with something like this. Now don't worry about how the ends look, because we're going to cut them down anyway to fit. But then first of all, I basically want to just add the shape of the handle in. So I'm just putting a curve into this. And of course, I can then grab my basket to measure against, because obviously we do want to kind of get it, first of all, the right size for the curve here, but also the right width, so it's going to fit nicely. So I want mine a little something like this. Then I'm just going to get my heavy duty floss cutters again, and obviously I want to kind of connect this handle to the outer edge, so we don't need these lengths. They're kind of just going to get in the way. I'm just going to cut them down a little bit first of all. And again, I'm just making sure I don't cut off too much. So just cut them down, but still have some excess length. It's just so it's a little bit easier to handle. So, like that. Now, what I'm then going to do is, again, just going to reference the basket itself, because obviously I want to know the point where I'm going to connect them, because I do want that twist to stay. So I'm going to make sure that I just keep a reference of that. So I'm grabbing hold of that point where I know the connection is going to be, but I then start to untwist the end, but only the end up until that point of where it's going to be connected. So just gently do the untwist at the beginning there, and then just kind of pull the 2 wires apart from each other, but only till that point. And then of course do the same on the other side as well. And then just using my tweezer nose pliers here, I'm going to grab right at the point where the twist starts, so where I know the connection point is going to be. I'm just going to kind of bend these wires inwards, so towards the other side, just because we might as well kind of help ourselves, make it a little bit easier. And just the other side as well. And then basically we need to maneuver it into place. So find the point where you want it to attach it. Then get two ends here of the wire of the handle, both of them in underneath the base wire that's right on the edge, avoiding the weaving wire. So kind of push that out of the way if you need to. So you can see it hooks just under that edge. And then, again, grabbing my tweezer nose, I just kind of do one side at a time. It's up to you how you prefer to do it. But just one wire at a time. I just want to start bringing them further around. So just bring that back outward. And of course the same with the other one. To basically be able to fasten it completely. So just bring it a bit at a time until it gets gradually tighter. So we can maneuver it in place to sit exactly how we want it to. Like that. And then before I cut anything off, I like to kind of just attach it on the other side as well. So you might need to just open the handle a little bit, but then otherwise get the two wire ends underneath the very opposite side on the basket there. And I like to kind of place them so they're in the middle of whatever length I attach them to. And then same principle. Bring these around back to the outside to basically tighten up the connection point here. Then go in and cut off the excess. And I like to make sure I cut it so that once it's cut, the wire I have left here is just enough for me to be able to use my pliers and squeeze it and basically tighten it more, but also squeeze it so the very end of the wire gets pushed basically in underneath the base wire on the edge, so also tucked away. And just do that same thing with the other one, and obviously the ones on the other side as well. And then you're done and you'll have your cute little wire basket. So you can obviously use this for whatever you want to, but it's especially perfect for Easter, so maybe add cute little Easter eggs inside. And I also think it could maybe be a really cute idea if you make a bouquet of flowers from wire and maybe beads as well, and then add them in so you basically have a basket full of flowers. And that in itself will be a cute little decoration. But otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now do feel free to check out my channel. I have loads of tutorials on there. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.